October 1600. Dawn fog over a narrow valley called Sekigahara. 160,000 samurai are about to decide who rules Japan in a single day. The man about to win everything is not a genius. He spent his childhood as a hostage. He suffered the worst defeat of his era and soiled his saddle fleeing from it. He served under two conquerors far more brilliant than he ever was, and he outlasted every single one of them. This is the story of Tokugawa Ieyasu and of the most underrated weapon in history, patience. He was born in 1543 in Okazaki Castle, heir to a small clan crushed between two great powers. A quick word on the world he entered. Japan had no functioning central government. Every province was ruled by a daimyo, a regional warlord with his own army, and they were all at war. Small clans survived by handing over their children. At age 6, the boy was sent away as a hostage. He would spend the next 12 years as a political prisoner in the city of Sunpu. And he used them, reading, training, watching how power actually worked. In 1560, his captor marched west with a huge army and was killed in a rainstorm ambush by a young upstart named Oda Nobunaga. In the chaos, the 19-year-old hostage rode home to Okazaki and took back his clan. Then he did something unusual. He allied with Nobunaga, the man rising fastest, and he never broke that alliance. For 20 years, while every other warlord betrayed everyone, Ieyasu kept one promise. It cost him dearly, but it bought him something no army could. He became the one man in Japan everyone could trust. 1573. The legendary Takedo Shinjin, the finest general of the age, invaded his lands. Against all advice, the 30-year-old Ieyasu marched out to fight him at Mikitagahara. It was a massacre. His army was shattered in hours, and he fled through the snow, so terrified that he lost control of himself in the saddle. Here is what makes him different. Back in his castle, he summoned a painter and had his own face recorded at the moment of humiliation. He kept that portrait beside him for the rest of his life. Never forget what overconfidence costs. 1582. Nobunaga, now master of half of Japan, was betrayed and killed in a burning temple in Kyoto. When the news reached Ieyasu, he was sightseeing near Osaka with barely 30 men, deep inside hostile territory, with assassins on every road. He crossed the Iga Mountains on foot, through bandit country, and barely made it home alive. But by the time he raised his army, it was over. A peasant-born general named Hideyoshi had already avenged Nobunaga and claimed his empire. Ieyasu had survived the crisis and watched another man take the prize. 2 years later, Ieyasu and Hideyoshi finally collided. At Nagakute, Ieyasu outmaneuvered him and crushed a detached force, a clean tactical victory. And then he did the hardest thing a winner can do. He calculated that he could win battles against Hideyoshi, but never the war. So he negotiated, sent hostages, traveled to the capital, and publicly bowed to the peasant's son. The proudest warlords called it disgraceful. Ieyasu didn't care. He had traded pride for time, and time was the one currency Hideyoshi could not print. In 1590, Hideyoshi completed the unification of Japan and handed Ieyasu a poisoned gift. He ordered him to give up his 5 home provinces, the lands his family had held for generations, and move east to the Kanto Plain, a region of marshes around a fishing village called Edo. It was exile dressed as promotion. Ieyasu said, "Thank you." Then he drained the marshes, cut canals, redirected rivers, and built a city on the swamp. That fishing village is now called Tokyo. He didn't fight the demotion. He turned it into a capital. And then he waited. But understand what waiting meant. Ieyasu treated his own body like a fortress under siege. He ate plain barley rice while other lords feasted. He hunted with falcons for exercise, swam rivers in old age, and mixed his own medicines. In an era when rivals burned out and died, health was his slowest, deadliest weapon. Nobunaga died at 49. Hideyoshi died at 61, leaving a 5-year-old heir on the throne of Japan. It was 1598. Ieyasu was 55, the strongest man in the realm, and finally, the waiting was over. Which brings us back to that foggy valley. Sekigahara, 1600, the largest field battle in samurai history. But the real battle had already happened by letters. In the months before, Ieyasu wrote to more than 180 enemy commanders, promises, land, forgiveness. When the fighting began, entire armies on the enemy side simply stood still. At midday, a whole wing of the enemy switched sides on cue. By late afternoon, it was finished. The battle for Japan took 6 hours because Ieyasu had spent 6 months making sure of the outcome first. In 1603, the former hostage became shogun, the military ruler of all Japan. And 2 years later, he retired. Deliberately, he handed the title to his son while still alive to prove the succession worked and crush every hope of a power vacuum. Then he built a machine for peace. Warlords forced to spend alternate years in Edo, their families remaining as permanent guests. Wealth drained into travel, not weapons. The system he designed ran for 260 years, one of the longest periods of peace any nation has ever known. There was one loose end. Hideyoshi's son had grown up in Osaka Castle, a living banner for every samurai who resented the new order. In 1615, the 72-year-old Ieyasu marched one last time and burned the Toyotomi line out of existence. It was cold, calculated, and merciless, and in the final assault, a red-armored warrior named Sanada Yukimura charged so deep that he nearly reached Ieyasu's own camp. The old man survived by minutes. Peace, he believed, had to be paid for in full once and never again. He died the following year in his bed. Ieyasu left behind a single sentence that explains his whole life. Life is like walking a long road with a heavy burden. Do not hurry. Here is what he knew. Patience is not doing nothing. Every year of waiting was a year of building. Alliances, canals, health, trust, letters. The flashy geniuses of his age treated time as an enemy to outrun. Ieyasu made time his ally and simply arranged to be the last man standing when it mattered. If you feel behind in your own life, you may just be earlier in a longer game. From hostage at 6 to shogun at 60 to 260 years of peace. That was the road of Tokugawa Ieyasu. Next time, the red-armored warrior who came within minutes of killing him, Sanada Yukimura, the last true samurai. Subscribe and step into old Japan.